A lot of times I'm driving, there's nothing to do, and I shuffle through the radio before I unglue. There's a lot of red on ways, it's traffic, I'm screwed, and I'm wired a bit different than a regular dude. It's not a bad thing, I embrace it, it's true. The radio don't stimulate brain chemistry fluid. The Buddha found nirvana and the Four Noble Truths. Through a meditative process, right action he proved. For me, I require the use of a tool, a detector, pin, pointer, shovel, and beach scoop. I'm meant to work the dirt with my history crew, but everywhere I look, my interest taboo. Most people choose Bieber over Tippecanoe. What does a detectorist listen to when the radio is full of bad music and news? I need an alternative for me to peruse. Beyond Sight and Sound gets fantastic reviews. A metal detecting show where my thought bubble brews. Thank you, Josh Kimmel, for inviting me to a detecting dork out with guests like yours truly.
Are you looking for a high-quality beach and sand scoop? Are you trying to take your hunting to the extreme? How about an American-based company that stands behind their product and everything they sell? Then check out our friends over at XTREME Scoops. John has been making scoops for some time now and makes a quality beach and sand scoop to take your hunting to the next level. XTREME Scoops recently released their new sand shredder that works great in the water and on the beach. And if you're a new Equinox user, you may want to check out his Surfmaster X3 that can trap those small targets you new Equinox users are finding out there. XTREME Scoop's company approach is let's do it right. So do it right, buy it once, and go to the extreme. XTREMEScoops.com. That's XTREME scoops.com. Caution. Please do not operate motor vehicles or power equipment while under the influence of this show. Listening to this show could cause side effects such as bouts of laughter, violent binges of cabin fever, and even dreams of silver and gold. Please be advised. Now that the fine print is out of the way, on with the show. All right, we're back and we're live once again. You are listening to Beyond Sight and Sound, metal detecting and treasure hunting radio for all the really cool digging people out there. And as I look into the chat, I see that you guys are already all fired up. Thanks to everyone for dropping in. I see a number of names flying across the screen already. Jesse, the Bills, Chuck, Maya, Scotty, good grief, I can't keep track. So we'll just say welcome to everyone for dropping in. Obviously, first and foremost, links in the description. Our friends at Shooters and Prospectors. Chuck Smalley, the man with the plan, the dealer of choice. Multi-line dealer dealing in Note to Macro, XP, Garrett, Detector Pro, DetectEd, Dean Ricker, Detector Covers, Cedar River Digging Tools, and many, many more. Give him a call. Also carrying the Ugly Box electrolysis unit. We've got a show coming up on electrolysis next Sunday, actually, where we will be talking about the new Copperhead technology. So very interested in hearing that. The links to our friends over at DETECTEES.com. Ken, Mark, Darth, Buddy, and the gang doing a great job, as always, here in the studio. We're rocking the Beyond Sight and Sound t-shirt. Remember, March is MS Awareness Month, and a portion of those proceeds do go towards MS awareness. So, if you haven't gotten yours, go ahead and get yours and get yourself entered into the continuing appreciation contest over on the Metal Detecting Beyond Sight and Sound group. Ohio Metal Detecting on YouTube, Crazy Spider Adventures on YouTube, Metal Detecting NYC on YouTube, DetectEd Outdoors on YouTube, Terry Shannon on YouTube, as well as the links for the Simplex raffle, the Swing Into Summer I&I event this summer in June, and the
East Coast Research and Recovery Association beach hunt that are seeding 44 pounds of silver into the beach. Yes, coronavirus is not stopping them. They are still planning these events, and we're going to continue to plan them until someone says otherwise, in the midst of many different events being canceled all across the country in the unfortunate times that we are in. But enough of that. It's the listeners have reached out to me before about this, and I've tried due diligence to track down this gentleman. It was such an honor to speak with him and a pleasure to bring him to the show. I'm very pleased to announce that tonight our guest is actually Terry Shannon, who is a well-known treasure hunter from, well, I guess you could take your pick. I mean, he likes to jump around between Minnesota and Florida and does an absolutely wonderful job with his videos. The audio is great. Check out his channel. The links are in the description and in the live chat currently. I did post them as we were rolling the music. But this guy has made many, many, many nice finds over the years, and just a true honor and pleasure to speak with. So we're glad to have him on tonight to discuss some of his experiences in the hobby, as well as discussing his perspective on the moon phase and how weather can play a part in our environment out there metal detecting, because for many of you that are coastal water hunters especially, you know how it really can be a tidal game. But that doesn't mean that the weather doesn't necessarily affect those of us that hunt inland either. So let's get him in here and get rolling with Terry. How is it going tonight, Terry?
Well, Josh, it's an honor to be on your program, and I thank you for reaching out.
Well, believe me, it is definitely, for me, it is a true privilege to have the opportunity to speak with you and let the listeners hear your perspectives and stories tonight.
Well, again, I thank you. You know, we enjoy a wonderful, wonderful hobby. And, you know, the really true treasure, I think, is just getting out there every day or whenever you can and enjoying the great outdoors and occasionally find a little bit of treasure.
Absolutely. I would agree. You know, getting out there, enjoying the environment outdoors, getting away from all the computers and media and all of that. And not to mention the friends and connections we make along the way, the memories that we create. And if you're lucky, you even find some treasure along the way. I'm not seeing a downside here.
I don't think there is a downside. You mentioned that I'm a snowbird. I have my home in Minnesota, and then we about 15 years ago we started coming down here to the Treasure Coast, and it's kind of an odd story. Years and years ago, my wife and I took a vacation when we had a small motorhome, and we came down to Florida and went down on the West Coast, across Alligator Alley, they call it. And up the East Coast, we stopped at the McClarty Museum. And I tell you, I started talking to those people. I had the fever so bad, it was just unbelievable. I couldn't believe that you could still find treasure out on those beaches. And that was probably 30 years ago. And right. I finally got my chance, and here, yeah.
And now look at you today. You're still finding treasure on those beaches.
I'm doing really well. The good Lord has looked down at me, and I really have done well. There was 15. Wait a minute. No, there was 11 ships that came up along the Treasure Coast in 1715. There was actually 12 ships. One was a French ship, but was smaller and faster, and it made through without realizing all the others sank. But out of there was 11 ships, and they sank right close to shore. And they've only found, out of the 11, they've only located 6. And out of the 6, the average salvage has been about $41 million per ship. So there's still 5 of them out there. They don't know where they're at. I got a pretty good idea where the 7th one is. In fact, I believe my first Spanish coin came from that ship. But there's treasure out there. There's a lot of treasure out there, and it's just waiting to be found. they haven't found the Queen's jewels yet. I don't know if you know that story, but
That's right. They are still looking for that.
Right. The king got remarried, and she, she agreed to marry without her dowry, but she wouldn't consummate the marriage, until she got her dowry. And apparently, I think there was like 8 chests of jewels or something that was coming up for her dowry, and they haven't found that. That's laying, along the treasure coast someplace. And these ships, they sank. Well, one of them actually ended up, part of the ship up on shore. They used it as a campground when they were salvaging and stuff. And it's just a nice piece of history. And we were talking about it earlier, Josh, before the program started, but a couple of weeks ago, I got really lucky. I found a low area, and, what I do, both Jerry and I, what we do is we go up and down the coast looking for low areas, where the sand has been washed out. And I found this low area, and the way to tell that the area is low is when I walked over there, I could see where these ghost crabs have been digging down, and they're bringing up this bright orange sand. I call it orange sand. That's the original beach.
Oh, yeah, that's where you want to be.
Exactly. And I got all excited. I pulled out some really neat things. But the best, on day 2, I got a coin. We haven't positively identified it yet, but I did take it to a well-known individual. And he said he thought it was a Carlos, I can't even pronounce the last name, Juan or something, Jonah or something like that, 1504 to 1516. And it's a Spanish 2 real. And I sent it into the Treasure Coast blog, and they believe it might possibly be the oldest coin ever found on the Treasure Coast. And I was lucky enough to walk over the top of it.
That is phenomenal. I mean, there's many of us, myself included, that we may hunt all of our lives and not make a find like that.
Well, I tell everyone, if you have to choose between skill and luck, take the luck.
Right?
And that's what had to happen. The conditions were just right, and I just happened to walk over the top of it. And, I've been holding off. We want to do a video of cleaning it, to kind of, because it's a special coin. I probably will never find anything, that good again. And so we want to video it. And Jerry, my friend, the close friend, that does the videos and that has been so tied up with work that, hopefully he's going to be able to break away this week and we'll be able to get it positively identified. But it's definitely a coin from the early 1500s. And that would be, 200 years before the 1715 fleet. That's a long, long time.
Yes, it is. I mean, that makes the find just that much more significant to you, I would think.
Yeah, as much as I've been involved in the treasure hunting and that stuff, when I found this coin, I thought I had a reel. I called Jerry up and I said, I think I got a reel, but I wasn't sure. I could see, the shield. I could kind of, vaguely make it out. And he come down, and both of us were not sure. In fact, it was that evening, Jerry called me back up and he asked what it weighed, and it was, 6.5 grams. And, a 4 real, he had just found a 4 real, and that weighed 13 grams, so that made it a 2 real. The weight was right, and that's when I contacted the expert. And, of course, my fears when I went over there is he's going to say, well, this isn't even real. But it was real, and it's old, and it's really kind of neat.
Absolutely. That is one to be proud of for sure. Definitely. Kudos to you on that very, very cool find. So for those who may not realize who you are, take a moment and explain just who is Terry Shannon. What inspired you to even get into the hobby, and what did you start with?
That's a funny story. I don't even know if you want to. My wife years and years ago bought me a cheap metal detector, very low-end metal detector. I think she probably got it at I don't even think they had Walmarts at that time, but she paid about $30 for it, which would be about $20 more than it was worth. And it, of course, it sat in the closet. And Radio Shack, that's where she got it. She got it at Radio Shack, and it sat in the closet for years. And then one day I was down at the we have a meat market in our town, Freezy, Minnesota, up there, just a small town. And I was down there going to buy some of these special hot dogs that he makes, and he had a metal detector leaning against the back wall. And I asked him, I said, "What's the story on the metal detector?" And he said, "It's for sale." And I said, "What do you want for it?" And he said, $75. And I tell you, that's the quickest wallet draw I've ever made in my life. I handed him the money, and I was excited. Forgot the hot dog. Went home, and it found out that he had left the batteries in it. It was a Garrett Ace 150, and he'd left the batteries in it, and it just all corroded. And I told the guy, and he said, I'll give you your money back. I said, no. I said, I want the detector. So I took it all apart and cleaned it up, and I got it working. And boy, I stepped out beside my house. I live, out on the lake, but out of town. And, I had it working, and I swung it back and forth. And when it got close to the ground, right in front of me, it would make a noise. And I thought, boy, this doesn't take long. And but I kept walking, and it kept making a noise. Every time that coil went across the ground, it made a noise. And I walked about 5-6 feet, and every time the coil got close to the ground, and I got so angry, I figured, now I'm entitled to, this hobby. I should, I've worked hard my whole life. Darn it, I should be able to do it. And I hopped in my car, and I drove to Fargo, North Dakota, which is 50 miles away, and bought a top-of-the-line metal detector, and brought it home. Went out to the same place, and that top-of-the-line metal detector did the same thing. And what I was standing over the copper tubing for my fuel line that goes into my furnace. So, it was a stupid mistake. You'd have to be an idiot to be that dumb, and I qualified at that time.
But that's how we all learn.
Happened to me. Well, what happened to me is I ended up with a really good top-of-the-line metal detector, and I started finding things. And once you start finding things, your interest just peaks. And I was very fortunate. I used to be the county sheriff. I was an elected position back home. And so I knew everybody in the community, and people would call me when they found out I had this hobby. And in our area, there was an old trading post where the Red River ox carts, traveled from Winnipeg down to Fargo and Fargo down to St. Paul. And they called it Pig's Eye at that time. And in 1844, the Indians went on revolt or on the warpath, I guess. And there was a large wagon train that was stuck down in St. Paul, and they had to take a different route, and they ended up coming to our town. And they built a trading post out of town, and I was invited out there and spent a whole year. And they just made some phenomenal finds, out there. And, of course, now I'm just hooked totally. And then coming down to the Treasure Coast, I had a son. My son was married a Japanese girl. My wife wanted to fly over to Japan to visit him, and I said, I just want to detect the Treasure Coast. And when she came back, I picked her up at the airport, and she was going over in Japan for 2 weeks. I said, we're not leaving. We're staying right here. And this is, I think, my 15th year. And I've had some real success, as far as the Spanish coins and that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, and phenomenal success in terms of jewelry as well. I remember seeing a video that was put out some time back by Ed Huffman, where he had the opportunity to meet and speak with you and show some of your displays of rings, and gotta say, a little envious.
I've done well on the rings. I really have. There's a river back home in Minnesota where the kids float down tubing. And they had been doing that for 25 years. And there's other people that detected it, but they didn't get into the fast water and that stuff. And when I started, I was getting 80 to 100 rings a year out of it, and some really nice rings. And I've done well down here. I got on the beaches also. Right now, the beaches are so sanded in that looking for anything Spanish is kind of futile right now. So, but there's spring break, so I'll be, walking up and down, the more popular beaches and trying my luck there.
Yeah, nothing wrong with the recent drops.
No, there isn't. And I, both Jerry and I, we've been able to return quite a few rings.
Right. Yeah.
My
absolutely.
wife just walked by and said emerald ring. I found a emerald ring that I had appraised at $11,000 a couple of years ago, and it's one of her favorite rings. And that was down here on the Treasure Coast.
Wow. So do you bring your rings home and she kind of looks through them and says, "Oh, that one's nice. Yeah, look, it's just my size. I'll keep that."
I tell everybody when I find, when I'm talking about the rings and that stuff, I said, now the good rings I don't get to keep, and they looked at me right off the bat and why not? And I said, well, my wife takes them, and that just pleases me no end. I mean, she's got quite a ring collection herself, it's a fun thing, you know. It really is. And if I can return the ring, if I can find out who it belongs to, I'm going to get it back to that person. You know, we had an amazing thing happen a couple of years ago. Actually, about 3-4 years ago, I found a class ring in the river back home. And my sister-in-law was visiting at that time, and she was able to, you know, get the initials off the inside, do a little research. And the guy's name was Slough. And I called the guy up, but I went in the phone book, and there was a Slough in Lake Park, just a few miles from us. And I asked him, I said, you know, and he answered the phone. It was an older fellow. And I said, you know, I said, do you have a son named Gary? And he's just silenced there for a minute. Finally said, yes, I do. Why do you ask? And I said, well, I found his class ring. I'd like to return it. He said, Gary's in Afghanistan. And I said, wow. My gosh. I said, yeah. I said, will you thank him for his service? I said, give me your address and I'll put the ring in the mail for you today. And I did. And Lake Park was only 25 miles away from us. And he got the ring the next day, called me up and thanked me for getting the ring. And he said, by the way, Terry, he said, do you remember me? And I said, no, you know. And he said, this is Jordy. And when I started in law enforcement, I was a patrolman up in Moorhead, Minnesota, and Jordy was my partner. And
wow.
I knew him as Jordy. See, and the name you know, the Slough name was different, see, and I just didn't put it together. And when I won the election and was sheriff, Jordy come down, and he had made me a handmade clock. And just a beautiful, it was like a big Western saloon, and then there was a jail beside with Sheriff Shannon over that, and he gave me this clock. And then he went through a divorce, and that's how I lost touch with him, see? And so, I mean, it was just home week. And then all of a sudden I got an email from his son, and he had lost that ring 25 years before. You know, thought he'd never find it. And I sent out an email, because it was kind of a neat story. And the newspaper, somebody sent it to the newspaper, and they picked up on it. It was actually on the front page of the Fargo paper up there. And Jordy and I got together, and they did quite an article on it. And you know, it was just wonderful. You know, the hobby put two people back together again.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the aspects of the hobby that I enjoy so much, is when you are able to find these rings that have been lost for so many years like that and be able to return it to that person. You can't put a price on handing them a piece of their life back. And you know as well as I do, obviously, there's plenty others out there that we're going to find that just there isn't enough information to return them. So when we can return the ones that we can, I highly encourage people to do that.
Yeah, and I really believe that what goes around comes around. I mean, when you do something like that, I think the good Lord pays you back. You know, it really, it's karma or something. Yeah. And, but I'm kind of getting off, you know, we were supposed to talk about the moon phrase, and I take off on one of these tangents. I apologize for that. I think,
oh, that's entirely okay. I mean, great story, obviously, and very good to hear.
Well, yeah, we talked. Well, thank you. We talked about the moon phrase, and this is another one that took me a while to figure out. You know, I was a firm believer, and still am, in following the waves out. I always would try to get out on the beach about 3 or 4 hours before low tide, and I would follow the waves out. You know, and if you get on the beach, if you'll notice, as the tide's going out, sometimes you'll have a steep angle going right down to the water. And by the time the tide has gone out, that steep angle is flattened out. And the reason for that being is as the water's going out, it's dropping sand. So if you follow it out, you're able to get some more depth that's going to be covered up in just a very short period of time. But you get beat up. The waves hit you, and then recovery is, you know, tough. But it's sure worth it. You pull out some neat things.
Oh, yes,
you know, and yes, yeah, it really, I believe quite strongly of it. And I never thought until one day, Jerry and I were detecting, and what we normally do is we look for low areas. We're looking for the cuts, you know, where the north wind comes out of the northwest, and it'll cut along the beach. And these are good, really good. But what's even better is often you'll listen to the news, and they warn you about riptides. You know, be very careful out there, swim near a lifeguard. You know, yes. I love these riptides because what they do is they will, actually wash water out. It works its way back into the beach there. And so normally when I go, unless I have a spot that I know that's going to be good, I'll drive up and down the coast and check looking for these riptides. And and I call them bowls. They look like half a bowl that goes in. And this, this thing washes out, and they're much better actually than the cuts as far as finding good stuff. And when you go up to the beach, if you look north and you see where the water's coming in farther than every place else, that's a low area. Head for that. Look south, same thing, see? And, we've done that and been very successful. Found Spanish coins who have done really well. And then one day we were out, and I was into an area and I was digging a lot of coins, a lot of stuff. And Jerry, got this one of us. He just took off walking, and pretty soon he called me. And actually, he tried to call me. I didn't answer my phone. He ended up calling a buddy to come and get me. But he had found 2 Spanish coins laying right on top of the sand above the high tide line. 2 8 reals.
There you go.
And I go over there, and a friend had come and got me, and Jerry and I, we dug targets until about 8:30 that night, until we just absolutely couldn't dig anymore. It was just, we were that tired. And it was just phenomenal. I mean, he's the only one that found the Spanish coin, but we found other artifacts of that stuff. So the next day we go back there, and we find 3 more 8 reals right on top of the sand above the high tide line. And I mean, that's just unheard of. I got a beautiful 8 real in just great shape. And some of the coins that get washed in, out of the surf, they're black and they're pretty beat up. And then, it seems like the ones that I believe get washed out of the dunes that are actually getting washed back out, they're kind of a greenish color, and they're in much better shape. And on this coin, I was walking along, and there was about 5 or 6 people all lined up in chairs watching their husbands or boyfriends fishing, a bunch of women there. And so I went behind them to go by him, and I was going to go down the beach, and I got directly behind him, and my detector sounded off, and looked down, I could see the real laying right there. Boy, it went into my pocket, and I walked about another 20, 30 feet just dying, and then I took it out and looked at it. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want anybody to know I found it.
Right.
And I got so excited, that I called this friend of mine. He wasn't out there the second day with Jerry and I said, I found a beautiful 8 real. And he happened to be in the area, so he popped out there. And this story sounds fictitious, but it's true. He looked at me and he said, he complimented me on the coin. He said, well, if they're laying right on top, he said, I'm going to walk around and see if I can find one myself. And I bet he didn't walk 30 feet from me. He turned around with his big grin and motioned me over, and there was one laying there that he just seen. He didn't even have a detector.
Yeah.
He asked me, he said, are you mad? Because I was gridding the area off, working that way. I bet I eventually, I think, would have got it. But I said, no, I'm not mad at all. Number one, you're a friend. And second thing, it just makes a heck of a good story, And, but what we think happened is it was a full moon. And when you get the full moon or the new moon, the new moon you can't see, but it's when the sun and the moon are all light up, and it just has that, it increases the gravitational flow on the water, and you get these high tides.
Right, you get your plus and minus tides.
Plus and minus tides, and so you've got a double whammy there. And when you get those plus tides, and if you notice you're on the beach, you get about 7 or 8 or even maybe 10 waves that come in. They're just normal waves. They might be higher or lower or something like that. Then you'll get one that just goes way up. I call this a surge. It just, and in fact, if you're not ready with it, several times it's almost knocked me down, when these things happen. And I think what happened.
Don't turn your back on them.
Exactly. I'm not a very big man, and I tell you, I've had them spin me right around. But I think what happened is we had that, the rough weather, we had the new moon or the full moon, so we had the plus tides, and we had that surge. I mean, it was just a perfect storm, and it was washing things way up. And that's the first time I realized that, hey, this is really an opportunity, and I should be hunting high. And, after we found those 5 8 reals, we didn't get any more in that area for a while there. But I spent, I had 2 weeks before we got another high tide like that. And I spent it going up the whole, almost the whole Treasure Coast north of the inlet there, hunting high. And I did really well. I mean, I found a lot of coins, I found some jewelry and that stuff all up high where you just wouldn't expect it to be. But it had got washed way up there. And And so it was an opportunity that I just hadn't recognized for years. And now, I'm I get excited about the full moon. I really do.
Understandably so, when you're making finds like that.
Yeah, the first Spanish coin I ever found was a 2 real, and it had a date on it. It's 701, and it was right at the base of a cut, and it was just a phenomenal day. I mean, we had a 3-day storm, and when we first moved down here, I was in a 5th-wheel camper, and we had it parked right on in a campground here, right on the beach, and I was within sight of my camper when I found it, and it was really odd because I got the signal. And I dug it up, and right away I knew exactly what it was. But I was digging it right at the very base of the dunes, and it was the very high cut. And there was a couple of old people that I think were upset that I was digging in there, and I had an identical signal right kind of beside it. I figured that's got to be another one, but I didn't want to dig in it, so I waited till the evening when nobody was around and went out. And I'm not digging into the dunes; I was digging at the base of the dunes, and I always fill up my holes. So I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I just thought I'd be careful. And that second signal was a modern penny. How does that happen? I just don't understand that.
Right? Yeah, but it sounded just like the other one.
Just exactly like it. At that time I was using the Mind Lamb Sovereign. And I think that's just a wonderful detector. That thing, has just treated me so well. And I mean, it's got 17 frequencies. You can go from the high down into the low without having to reground balance and that stuff. It just works well. It goes from dry to, and you go into the black sand. It just doesn't seem to affect it. I kind of lost my train of thought there. I was talking this, but it was just a wonderful detector, for that type of thing. Now I've got to switch over to this new MindLab Equinox come out, and my gosh, that is, the more I get used to that thing, the more I like it. I had an incident last, excuse me, I didn't mean to ramble like that.
Go ahead. The Equinox is a very good machine. Usually when I'm in the water, I'm using the Excalibur 2, but the Equinox is definitely a great beach and water machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got the Excalibur also, and it's a wonderful machine. Really, it's and on the Sovereign, I have 5 of them. I bought a couple extra because I was afraid they quit making them, and I figured I have to have them. And then when the Equinox come out, I was very hesitant, very reluctant to kind of switch. And the more I use it, the more impressed I am with it. It just, there was an incident we went down, it was probably in December maybe, of this winter season down here, down to a place called Turtle Trails. And that's probably the most popular beach on the Treasure Coast. And, you go down, you can go north or south, and there's a big, long line of sandbags. And when these sandbags are, they put them in there for erosion, they're great big things.
Right.
And when you can see them, your chance of finding something, well, they were exposed, and I went north, and when I come back to head south, went past the sandbags, there was a friend of mine saying that they're finding a bunch of musket balls. And this area, it looked like it had been plowed up like a garden. I mean, everybody was digging in there, but everybody had give up. It was done. And I pulled out 20 more musket balls with that Equinox. I mean, that's just unreal,
Way to go.
So, yeah, no, it really well. I got in, and I got into another situation where I got into a bunch of these bronze ship nails. They used to sheet the bottom of the ships with either lead or copper, and they're bronze nails, and they go way back, and I pulled out just a ton of them with that Equinox. And it was, the spot where they were found was right by a beach access, and that thing had been detected to death. And I would go down there, and it just, and I learned a lot about detector by doing that. I was just going down there and playing with it, and by the time I got done, I had over 150 of those, the sheeting nails.
Nice.
So
well, and that's
beautiful.
You're right. That's one of the best ways to learn your machine is just get out there and spend time with it. Use it. Get to know what it's telling you.
Exactly. And this was kind of a unique situation. I went over there, and I had a friend with me that had that big 15-inch coil. I had the standard coil on, and I did much better than him. And the reason for it being is there was a lot of black sand over the top of this area. And when you get in there with that large coil, I think that the black sand is highly mineralized. I think it overwhelms the coil, and so you get less depth than you would with a smaller coil.
Right. It was struggling to see the targets.
Exactly. And then, just to the other side, there was an area that was, a bunch of construction material. An old swimming pool had collapsed, and there was just a whole bunch of cement and stuff down there. I went down there with the small 6-inch coil, pulled out one gold ring and, a whole bunch of coins, with that small coil right in the garbage. So, I mean, you kind of have to adjust for the situation, when am I making sense at all there?
Absolutely. Yeah, you do have to adjust for the situation, learn how to change your settings on the fly, be prepared for the situation, because the detector itself is just another tool in our toolbox. It's an extension of ourselves, and some situations may dictate a larger coil. Some may dictate a smaller coil, depending on the environment. And even at that, you may still find that tweaking your settings is going to get you a little better performance from one environment to another.
Yeah, I'm a great theorist. Yesterday I went to a metal detecting club hunt. It was a sponsored hunt where they seed the area, and I had my Equinox. And I get there and I look, and there's about 75 people there, and by far the largest number of people out there detecting had the Equinox. See, and so you're a detector, everybody's close together, and I'm thinking, I'm going to get a lot of interference. These detectors are going to talk to each other. So I hunted it in Beach 2. I'm in dry land and in a park, but I figured nobody else was going to be in Beach 2. And it worked for me. I did really well.
And it is a very popular machine. We do see them around in many different areas. We've got a caller. Go ahead, Chuck.
Hey, Josh. Hey,
How's
Terry. You kind of answered part of the question I was going to ask you. What's the favored mode down on the beach? 1 or 2?
Okay, you'll get better depth in Beach 1, but when you get down to the wet, the 1, you're not going to be able to use it. It'll cause too much interference. And so
that's the same thing Gary tells.
Yep. So when you get down close to the water, put it in Beach 2. And
our beaches here aren't salt; they're mostly mud. But anyway, that was the question I had for you: is Beach 2? Do you run a manual setup, or what are you doing with that when you're in the water or on the wet?
I suppose it'd be a manual setup. I'm pretty basic. I'm considered a real senior citizen, and I just want it when it makes a noise, I'm going to dig it up, and so I just run it. Yeah, I want the speed at 4. The recovery speed at 4. I got the tones. I go on a 2-tone. And the reason for that being is that I have different tones that I have trouble hearing. And when my smoke detectors go off in my home, I can't hear them. My home phone rings, I don't hear it. I'm deaf in certain tones, and so I don't take a chance. I just put it on Beach 2, and if it makes a noise, I dig it. And about 2 weeks ago, and I don't pay much attention to the numbers. Everybody, I see guys standing there, and they'll run a detector over their target, and then they go 90 degrees and they swing that detector over the same target. And they're watching those numbers. They're trying to decide whether they dig or not. And to me, it's just amazing because they spend all that time. Why don't you just scoop it up and take a look at it?
Right, get it out of the ground. I mean, beach hunters by nature dig most everything anyway.
Yeah, so I just got a platinum ring, a diamond ring with solid platinum, and it come up 1 on the Equinox.
Ooh,
normally
nice
a gold is 13, and it came up a 1. If I hadn't have dug that tone, and the reason I probably found it is probably 5 or 6 guys went over it and wouldn't dig that one.
Good job.
Yep. Well, that was
Did I answer
question.
your question? Okay.
You did very well. Thank you kindly. The Equinox is an amazing machine. I've used it all through the Midwest and out to the Northeast, and I used it in England last year. And I ran in a Parks 1 mode in a field, and I was just hammering stuff, and I got a nice gold piece out of the deal. And I didn't go to the field settings because I was doing so well with the other. Then I switched to the field setting, and I went field 2 in it, and I saw my number of finds going down. Now, I was thinking maybe it was conditional to the ground that we had. I switched back to Parks 1. I started hammering stuff again. So sometimes different modes don't always work quite like you think they should in certain areas.
Exactly.
And
yeah, they came out with a... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would say they come out with a new mod, that apparently you can download onto your detector that'll take out the bottle tops, and I don't want to do that. On my Sovereign years ago, it's just very distinctive. When you get a bottle top, I'm talking off a glass bottle, very distinctive. It makes a blat, and I got one of those signals going out to the wet. And I figured I'm just going to dig it, get rid of it. And it was 14-karat ring. The band was cracked, And so I don't want to discriminate anything. I'll make my decision. I don't want the machine to do it for me.
Right. You are the final discriminator.
Sure. Yes, you are. That's very cool. And your show is very good. So I'll get out of here and let you finish up.
Well, thank you for calling.
Thanks for the call,
No problem,
Chuck.
Terry. Yep, Josh, take care. That Equinox killer machine, folks. I can't keep them in stock, Josh. They're going out as fast as they hit the door.
Wow. Well, the people can't do anything else. They might as well get out and detect.
That's right. Good fresh air and stay detector length apart. We were talking about that earlier.
Yep, I saw that.
Talk to you later. Bye.
We'll see you. But yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of people, and I've said this before on the show, people out there that put too much faith in the VDIs are missing good targets, whether they want to admit it or realize it or not. And sometimes for newcomers coming into the hobby, I mean, it's great that we've got the technology that we have and all the bells and whistles on the machines that we have accessible to us. But sometimes one of the best things they can do is cover that screen.
I agree. And when I found this 1500 coin, one of my friends said, "What did it read on your detector?" And I said, "Hold on a minute." And I took it outside and turned the detector on to see. I hadn't even realized what it rang. It made a noise. I dug it up, and I got a coin that was from the early 1500s.
Right.
I wasn't looking at the numbers. I was just looking at that prize in my scoop.
Exactly. See, for me, usually I'm hunting by tone, and I may use the screen as a secondary or third sort of reference and maybe check the VDI because when you post that up or mention something about it, there's always somebody in the crowd is going to say, "Well, what numbers did that give you?"
Mm-hmm. And that's a good question. I mean, that's fine if this is what they want to do. But Gary made me a T-shirt. It says, "If it makes a noise, dig it up."
And that's a truism.
And you probably will dig 1,000 targets that you wouldn't have had to. But when you get that one special one, it makes it all worthwhile.
Right. And that's what I tell people. I mean, when rings that's why I don't want to discriminate bottle caps necessarily myself either. Rings, they can ring up all over the scale. And if you're going by the numbers, you are missing targets, whether you want to admit it or not. And sure, you're going to dig a lot of pull taps. It comes with the territory. And I couldn't tell you how many pull tabs I dig before I hit a nice ring, but it doesn't matter. If it's 150, if it's 250 pull tabs, when you hit that next signal that sounds just like a pull tab and you're going, yeah, it's probably going to be another pull tab, and you find out that it's a gold ring, it makes all that work before, all those other holes, worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree totally. And one thing you should think about now is when you dig up those pull tabs, save them. Put them in a little Ziploc bag and take them to your local schools or something. They donate it to the Ronald McDonald House.
Exactly.
And apparently a pull tab has got about the same value as the whole can because it's harder aluminum or something. That's what I was told. I don't know.
Well, and it's a more sanitary way to recycle the aluminum for these charities. And that's exactly what I do. I'll bring them home, clean them up. They go into a tub, and that does get donated to charity. We've got a caller from New Jersey. Go ahead, Fred.
Hey, hello, Josh. And I'm listening to you, Terry. You're. I didn't hear the early part of the show. Sounds pretty fascinating what you're talking about with the moon phases and everything. But are you in Florida? Is that where you are?
Currently.
Yes, I'm in Florida. I'm in Melbourne Beach, actually. It's an intercoastal island in an area they call the Treasure Coast. We're about 30 miles south of Cape Canaveral.
Yeah, my brother's in Vero Beach, so I wanted to go down there because I think that's right in the center of that Treasure Coast, isn't it? Like Vero.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
yes, it is.
Okay. So you're saying you're saying that with the moon phases and everything, the best time to go out is when it's a full moon, like we just had that super moon. Did that create the high tides down there?
Yes, it does. And it's not only the full moon. You have a new moon that they call that too, where you don't actually see it. It comes so every 2 weeks you get the plus tides, And when you get a full moon, the tides come way up and then they go way out, and so you're detecting out. You can walk out on the beach farther than you would be able to normally either. So, I mean, the weather really makes a difference. That really helps you.
That's great that you're in tune with that because, I always hear that that's important. Now, in Florida, they have a rule where you can't go in the water and detect, correct? You can only do it on the beach unless you have a permit or something?
Is that correct? It's correct up to a point. Apparently, the people have salvage rights, to particular areas. And I believe, and I may be wrong on that. I mean, don't quote me on this, but I believe if you go north of the inlet, I think 5 miles from that point on, you can go in the water. Like out in front of Melbourne here, I've been in the water a lot. And I think if you get farther south down there by some of the areas, you can go in the water. It's just where the people have the salvage rights to these.
Right, because you're entering their domain, I guess.
Right.
By going out in the water,
That's why it's always good to know your local laws and legislation, regulations, or, if you may not, it's always good to reach out to a local hunter if you can, and maybe they can kind of give you some guidance of, hey, we don't want to be here because we'll be in hot water.
Yeah, well, I want to go down to my brother's. Right now I have the as far as water machines go, I don't have any. I don't have a Excalibur. I've got the MindLab CTX 3030, and
also
I have been thinking about getting an Equinox. Yeah, so do you use the Equinox in the water too, or just on the beach, the wet sand?
Just on the beach. I can use it in the water, but I've got the Excalibur and.
Okay.
Right. So you're kind of in. So you're kind of in my situation where when you're in the water, you use the Excalibur because it is, for me anyway, it is a dedicated water machine. That is what that machine is meant to use for. So that's why I opt to use it when I'm in the water instead of one of the other machines.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's, it's designed to go deeper too, right? You can go like at least 100 feet deep with that machine if you were scuba detecting.
200 feet submersible.
200 feet.
Yeah, okay. And the Equinox is 10 feet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's just really for low hunting. I know Steve Zazulik uses the Equinox, I think, underwater a lot, but
he does.
I'm pretty sure he does anyway.
He does.
From his videos.
Yeah, he does.
So, no, I've been contemplating the machine. I do have a Deus, but they don't operate that well down in the wet sand. I haven't found it myself anyway, but I'm not on the beach that much anyway. Most of my hunting is in the woods, particularly up here in New Jersey. I get down to the Jersey Shore once in a while, but that's usually just poking around. It's not serious stuff like you're doing down there.
Right. Well, and
don't
don't
get
me
stuff off those galleons. That's
Right.
amazing.
Well, and don't get me wrong. I mean, the Deus on its own is a marvelous machine. But for me,
Yeah.
myself, if I'm going to be near the water, there are much better options out there for me to where I don't slip and fall and, cost myself $800 because I ruined the remote for the Deus or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you wouldn't want to submerge that unit, but I know you have the Excalibur. I hunted with the Excalibur when I was up in Cape Cod.
That's right. You got yourself
year
a
and a
nice
half
gold
ago.
ring.
Yeah, I got a nice gold band. That's the only one I've ever found, really. And I used that machine. It was a little took a little getting used to because it's sort of just singular. To me, it just seemed like it made one tone when you hit things, but it didn't seem to. You probably have to learn it really well to know what that machine's telling you. But I was able to get that ring, so I knew it was telling me something was there. So I found a bunch of other little stuff, but nothing really good. But what I was going to ask you, and as far as, so Terry, as far as what do you recommend with if I was down there? Should I plan my trip to my brother's when it is a full moon? You think there's better hunting capabilities, or is it all have to do with storms too?
There's better potential.
Yeah, well, storm. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have it cut, I'm sure it's better, but.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Terry.
you can get these riptides anytime, but what it does, it just adds one more item in your favor. I tell everybody that's going to drive any distance to hunt to try to do it during the full moon phase, because you're going to be able to have the beach is going to be much wider at low tide, and the waves are going to come up much higher. It's going to move some sand up higher. It just increases your odds. Big time.
It's all about maximizing your potential.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what you want to do, because I've heard that those beaches get really sanded in down there, and it stops you from finding things because they're not, like washed away down to the lower levels. Does that happen a lot?
That's where your riptides come in. When you're down there, spend a little time and just travel up and down the beach and look for the low areas. If there's some riptides, there's always some place that opens up, it seems. But right now they're renourishing the beach, which to me is a crime. Actually,
Repunishment.
Yeah,
they're covering all the stuff again. Yeah.
Yes, and what it does is it washes out. They did. There's a park just south of me. One of my favorite parks is called Ponce de Leon Park, and they come in, and that was one of the first ones that they replenished this year. And they just replenished it the second time because the first batch had already washed out again. And when that washes out, it's going out, it's covering up the reef, and it's killing that reef. And I can't believe that they're allowing that to happen. It's just ridiculous what they're doing.
Well, They don't always. I mean, the Army Corps of Engineers did some stupid stuff down in Florida that proved not to be too worthy of the environment and everything, building those canals and everything. They drained a lot of the fresh water out to sea and brought the saltwater level coming in. And so when they do these large-scale projects, they don't always understand the ramifications of that.
Right, the environmental impact it may have.
Environmental impact, yeah. I mean, it sort of ruined the Everglades a little bit there when they did all that stuff. And I know they always have problems with Lake Okeechobee down there, different levels of water and everything. So they have their problems with water containment down in Florida. I know that. But I'm sure up here in New Jersey, when they do that beach replenishment you're talking about, it's kind of interesting. They put sand suckers out off the coast, and they suck the sand off the bottom and pump it onto the beach. I don't know how they do it in Florida, but that brings in a lot of stuff that would be beneficial to metal detect. Like I was down there detecting on the beach in the wintertime, and I just found a 1939 quarter laying right on the surface. Now, that wasn't dropped and not found by somebody. That was sucked in off the bottom, by these beach replenishment projects. So how do they do it there? Do they truck sand in from other locations?
They truck sand in, and they have a ship that pumps them in. But the ship has been gone for a couple of weeks, and they're still hauling sand out of there.
Oh, I see. So if they pump it in, they could be pumping Spanish doubloons onto the beach, right?
Well, I would hope
so. Hopefully.
I would hope so, but
I mean,
well, they pump it into a big.
Maybe.
Yeah, they pump it into a big box to catch all the debris and that stuff. And I have been going to go down there and ask where they dump in that box. And that's what I feel interested in.
That's a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because I know they're
about that, you know.
I know there for a while in New Jersey, they were actually screening those dredges. That's been years ago now.
They're getting a lot of munitions coming out.
Yeah, I don't know if they've went away from that or not.
Yeah, because they had a problem down in the Jersey Shore when they were doing that. They were sucking up stuff that they dumped off the coast after like World War I, hand grenades and stuff like that, and they were getting pumped up on the beach, and people were finding them with their metal detectors, like a World War I hand grenade, kind of an unstable device to be finding with your metal detector. And they had actual warnings on the beach when you're metal detecting. If you come upon these, they had pictures of them. They were, really bizarre-looking old hand grenades. But supposedly, after World War I, they just went out there a mile off the coast and just dumped 10,000 hand grenades in the water.
Wow.
And they just moved around, and they were getting sucked up and pumped back onto the beach. So that could cause a problem for somebody.
Right. But, that's a hazard.
We find a lot of 50.
We find bullets.
The 50 caliber ammo, huh?
Yeah, and I found 2 mortar rounds myself personally.
Okay,
wow.
So when you say 50 cals, you're talking about just the lead tip or the main tip, not the whole bullet? Like they were scraping off the coast or something?
Yeah, you get some of the shells from time to time, but you get more of the lead bullets, and they're really encrusted. And like I went up to Cocoa Beach one time as a main beach, and I found a mortar round, and the fins were still intact. It was in pretty good shape, so I took it up and gave it to the lifeguard. It was kind of funny, and he called the police, of course, and the police come and they called the fire department, and the fire department took one look at it and called the bomb squad. So it turned out to be a simple thing, got to be a major deal,
Right, yeah.
Well, they're always a little uncertain about those munitions because you don't know how stable they are, something like that. Mm-hmm. I saw it on Facebook. I saw a picture of a guy found it must have been a mortar. It looked like a little bomb. It had fins on it and everything. And the bomb disposal came and blew it up right there in the location where he was hunting. So it actually did have live munitions in it. So some of those are just training rounds where they just shoot them out of a mortar, but they don't have any explosives in them. But the ones that have the explosives, I'm sure those are something to stay away from. But no, it sounds. And how long have you been hunting the beaches of the Treasure Coast? How many years have you been doing that?
I've been doing it about 15 years now, and I've been very fortunate. I got a ring that was just a gold band, and then I got a smaller gold ring, and I got all excited figuring this ring was the small one was from the 1715 fleet, and it turns out the gold band was a posy ring, and inside it was the inscription "Godly love will not remove" in the Old English. And I sent it had a maker's mark on it, and it come back early 1600s.
Very nice.
I found some interesting things on the Treasure Coast, and it just isn't. When we talk about the treasure, the 1715 Spanish fleet, that gets all the, all the hype is on that 17.
Yeah,
right. All the media coverage.
And I found this coin, the Spanish real from the early 1500s. That's not on the 1715. I could be, but I would doubt that they'd have a 200-year coin. And so we did a little research, and there's at least a dozen Spanish galleons that have sank South Cape Canaveral that they have record of them sinking, but they've never been located. So there's ships all over the place,
Right. I saw a map of the Treasure Coast, and it just was dotted with wrecks off the coast. Like it was like a giant line of wreck markings all the way down the coast. So that's
they had a helicopter doing that. Yeah.
They're absolutely littered.
Yeah. So all that stuff is down there, and this turbulence, like when you have a hurricane or something, it washes it up and it deposits on the beach, hopefully. And imagine after you have your major hurricanes down there, the beaches must be crowded with detectors. I would think, right?
If we have this year we had a hurricane that was coming directly from Melbourne. And I'm in Minnesota, and I headed for Florida. I was going to ride the hurricane out. And I just crossed the Florida state line coming down, and Jerry called me up and said, slow down. It's veered to the right and it's going up north towards the Carolinas.
Oh, geez.
But, I don't want the hurricane to damage, but I do to get excited about, the beach erosion and getting rid of some of the sand. When the sand gets washed out, you're gonna do well. And watch these riptides. Where you look down the beach and you see where the water's going up farther than any place else. I wouldn't even detect my way up there. I just grab my detector and head for that spot. I've done really well. There was a spot. A buddy called me up one time and he said there's a half a bowl just up from your house there, and he said I detected, got some coins, but he said I'm going up north. I pulled 11 rings out of that the next day, 5 of them gold, and one was a 2-carat diamond.
Nice.
Which I didn't get to keep that 2-carat diamond. My wife had it, got it.
Right.
Yeah, well, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right? So
actually, it makes my whole day. She wants it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been married to that other lady for 60 years, and she's got it all coming. She paid her dues.
Congratulations. She doesn't mind you hunting if you're going to be bringing home stuff like that. So
it was a funny time. One time I found a real nice gold ring, and come home and she liked it. She was really excited about it. And I said, "You mind if I go out tomorrow?" And she said, "You can go right now." As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you got an open pass as long as you bring stuff like that home. And
exactly.
And what do you consider your best finds? These valuable rings or the old coins and artifacts from these Spanish galleons or whatever? What do you find that you value the most, or is it just all kind of? I found what's called a guile. And it's a Hindu prayer box. It's in the shape of an elephant, and it's silver, and it has beads in there. And I found that one of the first, and it's a very religious, deal. And I think 3 or 4 different archaeologists said it's priceless. But I said, well, give me what's the dollar value, and they won't tell you. They don't know. But I go for the old stuff. I like the history. When I was in high school, I thought history was stupid. We got to worry about the future. But now, I'm into that history big time. Yeah, I mean, when you detect, even if you're a park detectorist or whatever, you do gain a tremendous respect for the history, because the things you're digging up, you have to research a lot of times, and then you learn things about history, and it really does. Having that piece in your hand, 200, 300, 400-year-old piece, gives you a reverence of history that you never could get in high school.
Absolutely. It puts things into a whole different perspective for us.
Yeah, you've got a direct connection to that piece,
You worded that very eloquently. That's exactly right. Well, when you hold something in your hand that somebody hasn't held for 300 years, it is a reverent experience,
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and it directly connects you.
And I've said for a while, if they would start teaching kids in school history that way, where they can tangibly hold that history, they're not only going to learn it, but they're going to retain it much more better.
Oh yeah, I think I slept off history in high school, like you said, but now I've gotten a great respect for it. So I found a piece down in my woods by my house. It's just a token, and it said 18 Spring Street or whatever it said on it, New York City. And I said, that's interesting. So my wife Googled it, and she found out that it was this bodega in the 1870s where you had these tokens, and you'd hand them in, and you'd get different types of wine. They had these big casks of wine on the wall. And she had a picture that was in the newspaper then. She got it off somebody on the internet. And we have those two items together, the token and the picture of the place, with all these people turning in their tokens to get glasses of wine. It's just an interesting connection from a silly little thing you find out in the woods, But I could see that thing you talked about, that guile, that sounds really interesting. How big of a thing is it?
It wore around their neck. It'd be about the size of a $50, and it's got
really
the Hindu god Ganesh, which is an elephant on the front, and it opens up and it's
hollow.
If you watch some of my pardon me.
Is it a hollow device that holds something, or?
It holds. It's got 5 beads in there, and the priest blesses these beads. Like one is for the kidneys, and another one, each one of these beads has a religious significance. And when I found it, the beads were still inside. And
wow, that's amazing.
I got another neat thing. Last year I got a pendant, a solid gold pendant that we believe come from a funeral mass for the Inca or the Maya or the Aztec Indians, and I got that on the beach. And
Wow.
I talked to two. Yeah, it's at least 22 karat gold. And I talked to two experts down there, Carl Fismore and then another old timer, and they were saying once the 1715 guys showed up, or the Spanish, they actually the gold kind of it would be low carat gold. A lot of these pendants were like 8, 9 karat gold, and this one is 22.
Right.
So they said it had to be way before the Spanish coming in there. So they think it dates back to the 1500s. And what I did with it is I got several pictures off the internet that I copied of the funeral masks, and I made a little display, put it in a case, and with the pendant. It's a shame to find a trophy or something like that that's neat, and then just put it in the drawer and you never see it.
Right.
And I wrote a little.
You connected it to something. Yep.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about the little thing I have. I mean, you're connecting it to something.
Yeah,
right.
I always like when they display them that way too, because now not only do you have the piece, you have the history that goes along with it, so that people can educate themselves.
Sure, it's like a learning experience for people. So that's a wonderful thing. So now it sounds like you do a great. You have a great time doing it, and it's been very worthwhile for you with the objects that you've recovered. Have you ever sold any of your finds, or do you mostly just keep them?
I've sold. I've given more away, than on the rings and that. But the old stuff, I did sell a 4 real, and I was really sorry that I did it. But the guy offered me so much money, I couldn't turn him down. But at my age, I've got so little I can brag about anymore. So it's nice to have something.
Sounds like you have good bragging rights to me. It sounds like you've had a lot of good experiences with the detector. You said 4 real. Have you ever found the full 8 real piece on the beach?
Oh yeah, I've got.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Oh yes, definitely.
Oh,
I got one.
Huh?
Yeah, I've got. Yeah, I've done really well on the 8s, and you probably didn't hear, but the first time I discovered the effects of this moon phrase is just Jerry and myself and another friend. We found 5 8 reals laying right on top of the sand above the high tide.
Oh my gosh!
It was just, and that's how I discovered the moon phrase. I figured out what it was the value.
Wow, that's great that you connected it all like that, and you now you time your detecting. I'm sure you detect other times too, but you probably expect better results in those periods too, right? Like when the tides are perfectly aligned. And you go on the low tide, that's when you go, like when the tide is way out?
I try to go about 3 hours before the low tide and follow the tides out. But on a new moon and that, then I hunt up high. I when you get the high tides, I look for low spots, and this the Spanish real at early 1500s was found high. It was a low area. It had washed out. The waves had come way in and washed this area out, and you could see where, the ghost crabs are bringing up this orange sand. And I pulled some. I've got 2 bronze ship spikes. I got a couple ship nails, and a musket ball, and some lead sheeting, and then that Spanish real, the 2 real.
All right. So you say that the boats were lined with lead on the bottom to keep the barnacles off, or make them? Is that where they did that? Metal sheeting on the bottoms of the boat?
Yeah, the shipworms would eat, and so they would line the bottom of the ships with lead or copper.
Wow, and they used bronze nails to hold that on in place.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I guess when the ship would hit the reef and break up, all those materials then would wash up on the beach and so forth. And they're still washing up on the beach. So
yes, they are.
Yeah, it's a constant process, I guess. And when you see these pictures where they're diving down to the wrecks and everything, a lot of the articles they get are totally encrusted in coral or whatever incrustations on it. Does it happen that way on the beach, or are they pretty much look like a coin, or do you have to do an extensive cleaning on these items once you find them?
You have to clean them. I saved the last 8 real, and then I had a half real I got this year. I didn't clean either one of those because I've been invited to talk at several different groups and that. And the average person, if you look at one, when you find it, you wouldn't know what it was. You know, they
Right, it probably looks
tell
like
stories
a
about
lump or something.
Yeah, the people picking them up think they're good skipping stones and skipping back into the water. And so I, you know, some of them, there's an area here on the Treasure Coast where you find the reals are really black and very worn, and you go right around the point of land, and the ones there are just really in nice shape. You know, I don't know if it's two different ships or what, but you have to clean them. And the easiest way, you know, you use the electrolysis, you know, but if you do that, make sure that you don't, you know, overdo it.
You got to do mild
this,
electrolysis, yeah. You just want to get that incrustation loose on there.
Yeah. Muriatic acid
you know,
works
when
real well.
Dissolve the coin. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know too much about electrolysis. It's kind of an interesting thing for me, and I would like to try it. And I bought a little box from this guy Frank who sells them, and I still haven't hooked it up yet. But one of these days I'll do it. But it does sound like in that situation where you're encrusted with, it probably gets coral on it and stuff, right? Because it's been on the bottom for so long. Or I don't know what else they get encrusted with, salt. But that all flakes off with the and then it looks like a regular silver coin at that point once you do the electrolysis.
No, what you should do is make sure, you know, what I was using was these chargers that you use to charge your phone or you know. Right. And that's actually, I think that's 5 amps, and that's too much amperage. You know, what'll happen is that when you do the electrolysis, it will also take the impurities out of the silver, and you can get a very porous coin, you know. And so you got to make sure that you get the voltage down there. I got it about 1 amp, and you just do it really slow, and then take it out, and it'll come out, you know, black. And you take some baking soda and make a paste in your hand and just rub it with your fingers, and it'll clean it right up. But, you know, don't be in a hurry. Take your time. Just, you know, do it for a little bit, take it out and hit it with a baking soda. And then if you still need more, put it back in. But if you let it in there too long, it'll ruin the coin.
Well, that's good information for when I come down there and I find a handful of those coins on my first trip, right?
And it'll also keep your, it'll also do a little better if you rub that baking soda paste on there while the coin is still wet, too. And you'll want to tune in Sunday. We've got another electrolysis show coming up with Frank.
Oh, yeah? All right. I'll have to listen to that because, I'm still intrigued by it. And I have that old box. I don't have the new one that he has out, but I have an old, I don't know what he calls them, dirty box or something. Ugly box. It's got a name for him. But it's a miniature, electrolysis unit, but it's supposed to work pretty well.
It does.
They demonstrated it at my club meetings. And my club meeting is canceled because of the coronavirus on Tuesday. So I think that's impacting a lot of stuff. But hopefully it won't be around too long. Let's all hope for that anyway. Yeah. But, well, I don't want to take up your whole show talking to you about this stuff, but it's very intriguing what you're saying. And I look forward to going down there, and maybe I'll run into you on the beach, you know.
Well, that would be nice. I wish you well.
Yeah. Well, you know, you always need luck. That's one of our biggest saviors is luck. But you sound like you have a lot of skill, and you know how to read things, and your luck has a lot to do with your knowledge. So
he definitely knows how to read beach.
Yeah, I'll say. So that's a valuable skill if you're out there. So I'll be trying to initiate some of those things. Hopefully, I'm down there long enough to build it around a full moon. That would be interesting to see if it has any better results. But I wish you luck, and it was nice talking to you. I'll get off now. I'll let you get some more questions from Josh.
Thanks for your call, Fred.
So have a good night.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good luck to you.
Great talking to you. I'll see you, Josh. Good night.
Well, after hearing about the moon phase, any perspective on how weather can affect inland hunting?
You know, that I guess is a hard one for me to answer, Josh. I don't inland hunt down here virtually at all. I do up north. And I do know that after, a thunderstorm comes through or something like that, an hour and a half after that storm goes through, it's just unreal, the depth you'll get on those detectors. I think maybe the electricity in the air does something to energize the ground. But and when the ground is wet, you're going to get, after a rain, you're going to get much more depth.
Absolutely.
The very worst is to dry, and the hard stuff, you just don't get the depth. The rains are our friends big time.
Absolutely. It gets that moisture in the ground. It enhances the conductivity of the targets that we're looking for. And sometimes it can play a little havoc with us with the iron targets, but that's okay. It enhances those halos as well.
I did find one real. I was going to say two, but it was a 1 real. And laying right on top of iron down on the Treasure Coast, south of the Treasure Coast. And the reason I found it is because back up in Minnesota, there's an there was a trading post. There was 2 buildings. And the people that moved onto the farm moved up in there, the grandparents moved in there in 1890, and the trading post had burnt down at that time. And I went out there, and you can locate the buildings because of all, when they burnt down, all the nails are there, all the iron. And, by playing around a little bit, I was able to pick some stuff out of that iron. And that's how I got that real. There's a whole bunch of iron. I'm going over it real slow, and it's nulled out. The iron's there, and I get a little chirp. And I got the chirp the same place, and I dug down on it, and the coin was all covered with rust. The silver coin was all rusty. I took pictures of it and that stuff, but it was actually laying right on top of a big, bunch of iron.
Right. Yeah, I've been in that situation myself too, where sometimes it surprises you. That's a very good reason why you shouldn't put too much faith in the VDIs, because when those targets are mixed in with the iron like that, it will skew your numbers.
The Equinox is really accurate, as far as the numbers, up to about 8 inches or so. I found out if I'm getting down, really deep in that, then, I'll get a reading of about 3, and by the time I get the coin out, it's maybe up to 13. When you get a real deep target, those VDR numbers are not correct at all.
Right. Yeah, very, very good information. You have had just a phenomenal wealth of information and stories as well. Wow. Really, really great gentleman to speak with. I'm glad that we've had this opportunity, but we've covered so many different things, and I feel like there's still so much more you've got to share. We'd love to have you back again sometime in the future.
Well, I would be honored, Josh. This is kind of fun for me too. I enjoy talking to detecting. It really is. I've got so many friends because of this sport or this hobby. I've just met so many people and developed such good friendships. It's just a wonderful, wonderful hobby.
It is. And I mean, it's the only hobby that I can think of right offhand where, you really do truly reap the benefits. The hobby will pay you back. You can make money off of it if you want. You can do good things for people as well as yourself. The health benefits alone are a plus, keeping you outdoors, keeping you active, and the friends you make along the way are just real treasures.
Big time, big time. I couldn't agree more. I have a background in law enforcement, so I've actually, been called up on different crime scenes to use my detector to recover, bullets and stuff like that. And
right,
but that's because of my background. But it's just a wonderful hobby, and really now I'll go back to Minnesota about the middle of May, and I'm going to get several calls. I get them every year to help people find their sprinklers. They disappeared over the winter time, sprinkler heads, and then I also have property line stakes. People will want me to find their property line stakes. I never charge anybody for that, but on the property line stakes, they're iron. So what you have to do when you're looking for them is to go into all metal. And people will go rent a detector, going to find their stakes, and they just get frustrated and give me a call and they have a pretty good idea right where it's at, but they couldn't find it. Well, you put it in all metal and it'll pop up. But you dig a whole bunch of nails. It's amazing how much garbage is in the ground.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I tell people all the time, why rent a detector when you can rent a detectorist? Because, I mean, the machine itself, it helps, but it doesn't do you a whole lot of good without the experience behind it.
Yes, the more you use it, the more you get, get familiar with it, and it does talk to you. You know, it'll tell you something if you know how to interpret it. And that's where us retired people have really got it made, because we're out there so much more, and
right.
You can very truly read machine.
Honing those skills daily. I would have to agree. Definitely. Well, before we go, would you like to let people know where to find you, or mention your YouTube channel, anything like that?
Well, it's just, you know, you can find my videos on you know, just Terry Shannon detecting the Treasure Coast. Ed Huffman from Treasure Mountain Metal Detectors come down, and he did 4 videos.
Very well done videos too.
Yeah, and it's funny because he came, and he's a wonderful guy. We've developed a good friendship. I really like the guy, but he come down, and the first thing he did, he said he was going to meet the legendary Terry Shannon. You know, and that legendary thing stuck. It's funny because I get referred to that every once in a while, and it just, to me, it's very funny. You know.
Well, there is certainly no doubt or debating you are very good at what you do. You've been very successful with what you've done over the years, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Hopefully that success continues for you for a very long time to come.
Well, thank you. I hope you too. You know, you know, I'm 78 years old, so every day I think that, you know, I'm out there as a gift. You know, but I had a fellow walk up to me one time, and he said, "I'd really love to do what you're doing," but he said, "I'm just too old." You know, and I said, "Well, how old are you?" And he said, "I'm 62." You know, and that's his fault. I mean, he, you know, when I was sheriff, you know, we'd have these guys that retired, and we'd throw a party for them, you know, and wish them well, give them a jacket or something, and tell a bunch of jokes and that. 2 or 3 years later, I'd probably be called to be a pallbearer at the funeral. The people that go home and sit in front of the television set, you know, they're dying. They don't realize it, but that's what happened. When you have to have goals, you have to have ambitions and dreams, and you have to have exercise, and we get that all, you know, with the metal detecting. When we first come down to Florida, we were in that fifth-wheel camper right on the beach. And, you know, there was several guys that would go down on the walkway down to the beach and have coffee in the morning. And they just thought it was so funny. For me, I'm running around getting all my gear together. I'm all excited. I'm going to hit the beach and find, you know, some treasure. You know, and then all of a sudden I started coming back with stuff. And that ridicule or interest, you know, that they thought was funny turned to, you know, interest. And every day I come back, what did you get today? I mean, people become very interested in it.
Absolutely,
and,
they do.
Several of the women got together and told my wife that, you know, they have an intervention for alcoholics and drug addicts, and they thought that they should have an intervention for me. You know, I was hooked on, you know, this metal detecting. And I come back that day, I found 2 really nice rings, and they called off the intervention and all put in their orders. And, you know, just in fun, of course, but it was funny.
Right. Sometimes it's not so much as we choose the hobby as it is the hobby chooses us. And at that point, there's nothing left you can do. You can't fight it. You've just got to enjoy it.
And I do. I do. I am so lucky, and I've enjoyed, you know, quite a bit of success, you know, and it's because of being interested and being out there. And really, everything good that I've ever found has been a surprise. You know, when I look down on that scoop and I say, "Oh my gosh, you know, look at that." I get so excited.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think it has been a pleasure, and judging from the response we're seeing in the chat, we're not going to have any choice but to have you back again in the future. Everyone has thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, the perspective, and just the sheer enthusiasm that you have for the hobby.
Well, thank you, Josh. And you know, anytime I'd be glad to. I'm having a good time myself, you know.
Nice.
So I enjoyed this immensely.
That's what we like to hear. Well, hang in there with me for a few minutes there, Terry, and we'll get on out of here.
Okay.
So for everyone else, obviously, Terry Shannon. You can check him out on YouTube. I did see where Ohio Relic Hunter dropped the YouTube channel in the live chat. Thank you for that. And the description does hold that link that will propagate with the podcast, so look down in the information there to find the link for the YouTube channel as well. Highly, highly recommend checking out some of his videos and even subscribing. If you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the hopefully soon upcoming video of cleaning that very, very nice 2 Real that was found recently. For everyone else, if you enjoyed the show, make sure and throw us a like. You can follow us here on Spreaker, iHeart, iTunes, many of the other wonderful podcast distribution services, as well as Facebook and the lovely Facebook groups over there, and even over on Ohio Metal Detecting on YouTube. Until the next time, we're going to roll, get out there and try to find something if you can, and post up those photos. You know how we love to see them. We'll catch you Wednesday, where we announce the live giveaway of the Dirt Pirates event. So check us out then. Have a wonderful evening, folks.